In today's video, I want to talk about a couple of the most interesting theories on consciousness, at least one of the most interesting theories of consciousness. I was having a bit of a hard time thinking of where am I going to put this video in the channel, whether it's ongoing research or we're talking about philosophy. While one of the theories is mainly based on philosophy, the second one has a strong scientific background to it, and if is proven true, which the developers of this theory are actively trying to, it would explain most of the phenomenon on near-death experiences and altered states of consciousness, everything that is related to the research on consciousness. I am talking about Biocentrism by Robert Lanza and the Org-OR theory by Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff. Now, one of the things that I want to highlight is that these theories are not made by New Age gurus or even experiences, and not to undermine the validity of experiences themselves. People who go through psychedelics, who go through near-death experiences, and who have, they're not afraid to lose anything by telling their experience, and they just say it how it is. They say things like, we're all one, love is all that matters, we're not our bodies, there are multiplicity of planets, universes, we can travel through timelines, so on and so forth, and they have no fear to say these things. But now the people who are proposing these theories and are working on a mathematical basis for it and a scientific basis for it are people in the medical fields, physicists, biologists, as I'm going to be going into it. So it's important to have that in mind. Some of the main themes that I'll be approaching is whether death is a portal into another universe, or whether at the moment of death all the information that is within our brains is sort of scattered, quote-unquote, somewhere else. The whole idea of a quantum consciousness ties a little bit into what I was talking about in the previous video, how at the moment of death there's a surge of activity in the brain, and then when it ceases, what happens to all of that information? Where is the information? Before I move forward, I would like to remind you that if you want to join the growing discussion on consciousness and would like to be notified on the latest scientific discoveries and theories surrounding this topic and how they connect to ancient mythologies and philosophies, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, as I'll try to upload at least one video per week as I continue with the outline. Alright, so here's the article. Quantum theory claims that consciousness moves to another universe after death. Is death a portal to another universe? That's the implication in this article. Where did I see it? What are the chances that death is a portal into another universe? I'm pulling all these articles because they're the same article. This one is a little bit different, but these ones are the same articles. As I said, these articles are rewritten by algorithms and just posted on and on and on. It seems that the author of the article is a lady named Anna Lemind, or however that's pronounced, BA, on December 7th, 2013. This is quite a bit of an old article now. This is 9 years old at the moment of making this video, and these quantum theories were already out there. Now, this theory is based on Robert Lanza, which he's a scientist. Time magazine names Biocentrism author Robert Lanza the 100 most influential people in the world, biology as the central drive in science, so on and so forth. So this is someone who is known in mainstream culture. And the reason why I'm gonna be looking into this article instead of this other one where it goes a little bit deeper into this biocentrism theory, but that is merely transport into another universe, is because in this one, one of the main theories, one of the theories that has been giving some recent data, some recent information, and some recent trials and experiments is mentioned here. I have mentioned this theory in my previous videos, but I haven't gone deep into it because it's quite complicated, number one, and number two, there are a lot of new developments coming together, and all of my latter videos, all of it is pointing towards that evidence. So this theory is the orchestrated objective reduction by Penrose and Hameroff, and I'm gonna go into it in a little bit here. Alright, so this comes from a book titled Biocentrism by this gentleman, Robert Lanza. The main thing is life does not end when the body dies and can't last forever. This is life itself on its own. When you go a little bit into Robert Lanza, as I mentioned, he sees biology as the central driving science in the universe. Consciousness creates the universe rather than the other way around. Lanza claims that scientists will need to place biology before the other sciences to produce a theory of everything. These theories of everything are coming up. I have at least 3 of them that I can think of right now, which I'm going to be going into in the future. I haven't even talked a lot about Tom Campbell. Tom Campbell, former NASA physicist, is he has one of the most influential theories out there. And there are a lot of experiments going on at the making of this video. So Robert Lanza, he, as I said, is one of the 100 most influential people, top 50, one of the top 50 world thinkers, and so on and so forth. He seems a little bit of a mainstream figure. A lot of the criticism towards his ideas, it doesn't really say anything. There's no proof about it. It's kind of like, and then what sort of situation. If you go to the Wikipedia, it shows that despite this sort of mainstream figure idea, sort of like Elon Musk and the sort of figures that we have in our modern media, Robert Lanza is an American medical doctor and scientist, current head of Astellas Global Regenerative Medicine, chief scientific officer, so on and so forth. He seems to have been working with stem cell research. In 2003, he cloned and endangered wild hogs from the frozen skin cells of an animal that had died at the San Diego Zoo nearly a quarter of a century earlier. Clinical traits for blindness, and then his theory, biocentrism. So, I mean, this is not just a new age figure that is just trying to say things. This is a scientist who has cloned and endangered wild hogs, so it's fair to assume he has an idea of what he's talking about. So as I said, yeah, it is mentioned in the article, stem cells, cloning endangered animal species, biocentrism, and he started going to the whole idea of physics, quantum mechanics, and astrophysics. So the theory implies that death simply does not exist. It is an illusion that arises in the minds of people. It exists because people identify themselves with their bodies. In the first place, they believe that the body is going to perish sooner or later, thinking that the consciousness will disappear too. So here comes one of the main questions for these new theories of consciousness, for what the research is suggesting, is what is first? Is it the body? Is it this, as I like to call it, this magical entity, the brain, quote unquote, who generates consciousness, or does consciousness exist outside of the body? And then the body comes after consciousness. If you think about any species of animals, if you see fish swimming together at the same rhythm, if you see birds flying together, you can see that there is an outside component of consciousness, an outside intelligence to things. These are just basic ideas that I have been wanting to go deeper into, but it's fair to assume that there seems to be intelligence outside physical matter, and this is the key for these theories of consciousness. According to Lanza, consciousness exists outside of the constraints of time and space. It is able to be anywhere in the human body, and outside of it, that fits well with the basic postulates of quantum mechanics, according to which a certain particle can be present anywhere, and an event can happen in several, sometimes countless ways. Now that's an interesting way to put it, and that can be taken the wrong way. It's a little bit confusing, this statement, but the whole idea of quantum consciousness does have a precedent to it, especially if these newer theories that I'm going to be talking about in just a minute manage to prove that there's quantum data within the brain, and that there's this intelligence in the quantum world. Therefore, we can aim towards this idea of quote-unquote quantum consciousness. Lanza believes that multiple universes can exist simultaneously. In one universe, the body can be dead, and in another, it continues to exist, absorbing consciousness that migrate to this universe. Now, this is a little bit far-fetched, as I said. A lot of the criticism to this biocentrism theory and the ideas of Robert Lanza is because it's a little bit far-fetched, and it has no background to it. And I agree a little bit. It's simply a theory, simply an idea. So this means that while traveling through the tunnel, that person ends up in a similar world. Now, as I've been saying, this is a little bit far-fetched. However, when you go into the reports of near-death experiences, you do find the occasional experiences where people mention these ideas of them existing in different realms of reality, or reliving their life as many times as they want. This has to do with the idea that everything is holographic, that there is no reality, there is no physical world in the underlying reality, and everything is some sort of a hologram, some sort of an illusion, and the simulation theory just sneaks in, and so on and so forth. So what this article is talking about is the existence of the multiverse theory. This is a theory, quantum theory, that is real, and there are two. There's the Copenhagen, and then there is the multiverse theory. Now, something that comes into my mind right now is that in order for the multiverse theory to exist, it would be too chaotic, it would be too complicated. So in my mind, the only way that a multiverse theory could be real is the fact that everything is a hologram and we're living in some sort of a simulation. Reality is not as real as we think. Things and the physical world are simply an expression of data which exists somewhere else. And now, I've talked about that in a different video, which is not fully related to it, but it speaks about it. It has to do with this research on consciousness going mainstream, and it goes into some of the data and the papers and the research revealed by some government agencies for the public to access, and it talk about some of the experiments and the research that was going on at the Monroe Institute, and they speak about this holographic theory and how everything is a hologram, so on and so forth. I'm gonna link it somewhere in the screen. All of these videos, references that I'm gonna be making are either gonna come on the screen or they're always gonna be below in the description. Okay, so going into it, multiple worlds. This hope-instilling but extremely controversial theory by Lanza has many unwitting supporters, not just mere mortals who want to live forever, but also some well-known scientists. As we mentioned, this multiverse theory is right here. This multiverse theory, science fiction writer H.G. Wells, but then Hugh Everett, then he had this thesis at Princeton University. So I think I speak about it in that other video that I made of the experiment that cracked reality wide open. I'm going to link it somewhere in the screen. I go into an in-depth review on the double slit experiment and some of the implications, along with some newer information which adds to this experiment. And there's the two theories, the multiverse theory and the Copenhagen interpretation. Now, you can find a lot of information with a quick Google search. You can go watch that video. I go in depth into a lot of this experiment that cracked reality wide open. However, this theory, it basically states that at any given moment, the universe divides into countless similar instances. The triggering factor for these multiplying worlds is our actions, explained Everett. So this is the idea that every time you as a consciousness, as an individual, as a being, come with a choice, and you decide to go or do something or choose something over the other thing, universes split and the two choices exist at the same time. As I said, this would be a little bit too chaotic, a little bit too complicated. How many worlds for every choice, for every human being would there be? The only way that this could be possible would be in a non-physical state. as a realm of opportunity, as a realm that can be explored as information, but not in a physical pragmatic sense. However, some other theories of consciousness suggest that, as I said, if indeed we are living in some sort of hologram, in some sort of... So the idea of reality, of how we perceive the world, is that when we look at objects, when we perceive things, these things are not real. Quantum physics tells us that all physical reality are bits of information which our brains create and manage to create a visual image. We think that is in our brains, but as I've been talking about, some of the theories suggest that this consciousness is somewhere else, and our brain is some sort of a filter. In any case, if we think that the brain is the seat of consciousness, according to the theories, the brain creates this visual image in our heads. Nothing really exists. Everything is a perception of our own brain or our own consciousness, and if consciousness turns out to be somewhere else, everything is in this matrix consciousness and not in reality. That is the only postulation in my mind that a real pragmatic multiverse theory would be true. But as I said, in some altered state of consciousness experiences, people meet themselves in different lives, in different choices of their own life. They can relive their own life as many times as they want to get whatever lesson, or as they call it sometimes, to fulfill their quote-unquote soul contract. This aids the idea that there is this holographic reality and we can switch back and forward. Alright, so I spent a little bit too much time on this biocentrism theory, so I'm gonna save the OR, which is the main theory that I want to speak about, for the next video. I'm gonna split this article in two different videos because what I've just talked about and what I just went through is something also very important, something that I wanted to point out at some point. This whole idea that people are actually during their altered states of consciousness, and when I say altered state of consciousness, I mention it because the same things happen when people go into out-of-body experiences and psychedelics. They speak about seeing creation for the first time and how there's all this creation of these different worlds and there's these different timelines, and they sometimes go and see different worlds and so on and so forth. This multiverse, this plurality of universes, of planets, of realms, even realms of existence or dimension. This is all in the literature and the reports of altered states of consciousness. I mentioned the first consensus statement from medical experts about around the world about all of this. It is right there. People talking about these things is pretty obvious. So as a bit of a TLDR on this biocentrism theory, and things that are very important is to point out the thing that it says about death not being real. This is consistent with the research, this is consistent with the reports, and as Robert Lanza mentioned in his theory, people identify with the body, and the first thing that happens in altered states of consciousness is that people feel that people lose that identification with the body. They identify as something else, something larger, or sometimes they know that that's the body. They know that that's something different to this higher, and as it is stated in the reports, a heightened, an exalted level of consciousnness. The article goes a little bit into the quantum principles and how consciousness seems to have these principles as well. Now, as I mentioned throughout the video, this is a little bit of a confusing statement. However, there's a precedent to this, and if, as in the second theory that I'm going to present in the next video, it is confirmed or it's proved that there is quantum information in the brain, then we can start talking about this quantum consciousness with a scientific background. The data, the reports, some of the things, some of the theories all suggest that the idea that there is consciousness outside of the body. As I mentioned, that I'm going to link it here on the the screen because I didn't have the chance to do it, because I mainly speak about it in the next part of this video, talking about the Orco theory. I talked about that premortal consciousness where mammals dream about the universe before they are born. This means that there is this outside consciousness that everybody has access, all beings have access to, and it seems that when beings are about to incarnate, they do have this information. Now, there is the mention of epigenetics, and I'm going to be talking about epigenetics in the future because that was the first counter argument that I found for that video. But if, as I mentioned again and I repeat, if the Orco theory proves that there is quantum information in the cells, in the microtubules, in the brain, then epigenetics and quantum consciousness is not contradicting each other. It's simply the same thing. I'm going to approach that in the future. It's as simple as to think about a school of fish or birds flying together. What is the intelligence that tells them to move at the same time? How are their brains connected? Is consciousness outside the body? And lastly, the thing that we have to take into account in this video is the whole concept of the multiverse theory. So in order for the multiverse theory to exist, as I mentioned, we have to go into it and we have to make it pragmatic somehow, given the fact that in the reports of all the states of consciousness, people speak about these timelines. People speak about going into different timelines, reliving their own lives. If you go to quantum regression, all these ideas, this is a thing in the topic. It goes into reincarnation and so on and so forth. This wheel of life, if you may. Now, the only way that this multiverse theory would be true or would be pragmatic is that reality is not as real as we think, and not a entire physical universe is created in the mechanics of physics that we understand. But if we understand the physical reality as some sort of a hologram, as the rendering of information, as it is proven by neuroscience, which states that the brain is actually creating an image within your brain. Things do not exist, and we go back into quantum principles. Quantum principles state that all physical elements are created by these particles, these bits of information that somehow your visual cortex filters and goes into your brain, and then your brain creates a mental image. It does not really exist. You're simply transferring the information or rendering the information in your brain. This goes in hand with the holographic theory. In this sense, this creation of multiplicity of universes could really be true, and that would also have to have and that idea, that possibility would also be pragmatic if there was some sort of a matrix consciousness, a place where all the information exists, a place where all of it comes from. You talk about the Akasha, you talk about these things in ancient philosophies. But in any case, I think that's enough for today. As I mentioned, in the next video I'm going to be talking about the orchestrated objective reduction, which was the most important theory that I wanted to talk about. However, this theory of biocentrism did give us a lot to talk about. If you're on the path of finding the truth about reality and our purpose as humans on Earth, the information that I have to share concerns you. After a lifetime of research in philosophies ranging from Buddhism to the occult, I've encountered themes and patterns along some baffling information that is beginning to be seriously studied by science. A rational divine outline, The Ghost of Jesus, is the first iteration of this project, where I analyze the message of Jesus without dogmatism, fanaticism, or religious bias. You can find my work available on Amazon on the link below. If you find this work valuable, consider subscribing, sharing, and following me on social media, as it will help others in the same path to find this information. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.